home and they come back remotely. So we're very grateful for you for covering, but we are all here. You're more than welcome to stay if you so wish for training purposes, or I imagine you needing to get on with your busy council work. But thank you very much for your attendance today, and that's Councillor Slade and Councillor Burton. Thank you. So moving on then to declarations of interest. Councillor Burton, you've got your hand up. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I will be leaving you, but I'd just like to say I am Bearwood and Merley, not Camford Heath. I
do apologise. You moved house and you didn't even know it. My deepest apologies. That's Councillor Richard Burton, who is Bearwood and Merley, or as I call it, Merley and Bearwood and Merley. That's right, isn't it? It used to be around the other way. Thank you very much, Councillor Burton. So you're free to join us if you so wish, or to leave. So declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, Councillor Williams?
No, none for me.
Thank you. And Councillor Bagwell?
None.
For completeness, I have no declarations of interest. Thank you very much. So the protocol for public speaking is at agenda item 4. And please note that this protocol has been circulated with the agenda sheet and is available in the public domain. So on to the substantive, which is item 5, Palmer Pizza, 1448 Wimborne Road, Bournemouth. An application has been received for a new premises licence for the premises known as Palmer Pizza, 1448 Wimborne Road, Bournemouth, BH 107AS. This matter is brought for the Licensing Committee for determination. So now we'll introduce the parties who are going to take part in this subcommittee. I'll introduce myself first, and I would ask that our subcommittee members please state their ward and their role on the committee. My name is Councillor Jude Butt. I'm chair of the licensing committee itself and chair of this licensing subcommittee for the purposes of today's business. And my ward is Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. Councillor Bagwell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Bagwell. My ward is Hamworthy and I'm the Vice Chair of Licensing.
Thank you very much. Councillor Williams.
I'm Lawrence Williams, Councillor for Littledown and Iford, and I'm a member of the Licensing Committee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. And we heard from Councillor, told you about Councillor Slade and Burton. And thanks to them, Councillor Slade from Broadstone and Councillor Burton from Merley and Bearwood. So we move on now to other attendees. And Mr. Tyler, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chair. Joseph Tyler, Democratic and Overview and Scrutiny Officer, and I am the clerk for today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tyler. And Mrs. Hooley?
Thank you, Chair. Nikki Hooley, Democratic Services Officer. I'm here just to take the minutes today, but will not be participating in the meeting.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for that task. Mrs. Jardim?
Thank you, Chair. Tanya Jardine, Licensing Officer, and who dealt with the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. McNamara?
Thank you, Chair. Joanne McNamara, Senior Lawyer, BCP Council and Legal Advisor to the Licensing Subcommittee today.
Thank you. And now for the applicant, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, David Ramsey, representing Palmer Pizza.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Karp.
Thank you very much. My name is Nikolai Karp. I'm the owner of the Palmer Pizza and the alcohol license holder.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Karp. Now, we do have some objectors. They're not here in person. We have one who's not named. The other lady is Eloise Goodenough. We also have a supporter, and that's Ward Councillor. The Ward Councillor isn't here in person because, unfortunately, he wasn't able to serve due time to be here in person or remotely, but he has given us a statement, and I shall be reading that out later, and that's Councillor Lawrence Fear, and that's the Kinston Ward. So in addition, Democratic Services are providing technical support, as we've heard in the background, but they will not be taking part in the hearing. So just to check that everybody who's given notice of their intention to speak has been identified, and anybody who wishes to withdraw that representation or wishes not to speak shows their hand now. So I'm looking for hands. Everybody's happy. Okay, so I'm so content. I'll just pop through procedure. The licensing officer will present the report. The applicant will make their application. Questions of the applicant by all party members of the committee go first. We have no responsible authorities. We do have some other persons. They're not here in person, but I will read out their submissions at that stage. Then we have questions of other persons, and members of the committee will go first. Obviously, they're not here, so we'll be looking at their applications to raise any questions with regard to their submissions. All parties will be given an opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first, and then I'll conclude the hearing. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with the legal advisor and the clerk present after the meeting. A notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held, which is today, Thursday, May the 26th, in accordance with the regulations. The notification decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. So I'll just ask that everybody's content with that process. Mrs. Jardim, are you content?
I am, thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. McNamara?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Ramsey?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Karp?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And finally, and most importantly, may I please remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which they've already given in writing, but to expand on their written representations. And all questions come through the chair, please, and I will direct where answers are given when that comes through, and no cross-examination of parties, please. Let's keep things clean. So with that said, I'll ask our licensing officer, Mrs. Jardim, if she kindly present the application. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the application before you today is to consider whether to grant a new premises licence at Parma Pizza at 1448 Wimborne Road in Bournemouth. These premises already hold a premises licence, which covers the ground floor only and which permits late night refreshments indoor and outdoors, Friday 2300 to 0100 hours and Saturday 2300 to 0100 hours, and the supply of alcohol Sunday to Thursday 1100 to 2300 hours and Friday and Saturday 1100 to 0100 hours. In addition, it permits for these licensable activities to take place from the start of permitted hours on the 31st of December to the end of permitted hours on the 2nd of January. The applicant is actually seeking a new premises licence to cover the ground and first floors of the premises at 1448 Wimborne Road and for the provision of late night refreshments indoors and outdoors, Sunday to Thursday, 2300 to 0100 hours, and Friday and Saturday, 2300 to 0200 hours, and for on and off sales of alcohol, Sunday to Thursday, 1100 to 100 hours, and Friday and Saturday, 1100 to 0200 hours, and for these licensable activities to take place from the start of permitted hours on the 31st of December to the end of permitted hours on the 2nd of January. The applicant has advised that should the new licence be granted, the current licence, which is under BH1 81858, will be surrendered. The licensing office received 2 representations against the application, and this is from other persons, on the grounds that the application would undermine the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, and the public nuisance licensing objectives. We received no representations from any of the responsible authorities, and members are now asked to consider whether to grant the application, and should the licence be granted and the applicants fail to operate in accordance with their licence and any conditions attached to it, aware that any responsible authorities or interested parties may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Jardim. So are there any questions of fact, members, with regard to Mrs. Jardim's report? Councillor Williams?
No, thank you.
Councillor Bagwell?
No, thank you. It's very clear and succinct.
I just have one. The start of permitted hours on the 21st of December to the end of the permitted hours on the 2nd of January. Isn't that the 1st of January? Why, or have I missed something here? Why have we gone to the 2nd of January?
That's what was on the application form, and on the previous one, that's what's been agreed because no objections were made to that. And that's, if no objections are made, it's granted as per the application form.
Okay, because I remember...
Unless Mr. Dave Ramsey wants to clarify, apologies.
Okay, so I remember an example of that coming forward, and it was in fact a mistake. So, but if it's been granted, it's been granted. But it would be usual to be the 31st to the 1st, not the 2nd. So I think we need to be careful and mindful to watch that in future. But as you say, if it's been granted previously, Mrs. Jardim, then we will have to accept that. Thank you very much. So are there any questions of fact from Mr. Ramsey for Mrs. Jardim? Mr. Ramsey?
No, no questions. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Mrs. Jardine?
No, no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, time for the applicant to make their application. And Mr. Ramsey, you're speaking on behalf of the applicant, so you have the floor. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you've heard, the applicant is Mr. Nikolai Karp, and he is the sole owner of Parma Pizza. Mr. Karp leases the premises from Mr. Alistair Wilson, and I believe there is a statement from him that has been passed to you. Mr. Karp, despite advice from friends to the contrary, decided to make his business in Kinson, and it's a new venture, his dream of owning his own restaurant. Initially, he opened a unit at the junction of Wimborne Road and Kinson Road. However, this limited his premises to primarily a pizza takeaway, which was not his ambition. Approximately 2 years ago, he secured the current premises at 1448 Wimborne Road, which allowed him to have approximately 30 covers on the ground floor. A planning application was submitted to BCP Council for change of use of a vacant premises and the installation of an extraction unit. This application was granted in September 2020, despite objections from 3 local residents whose main grievance was that they did not want another food premises in the area. The current premises licence for Parma Pizza was submitted shortly afterwards, with robust conditions being offered to satisfy the 4 licensing objectives. As a result of these offered conditions, there was no objections from the responsible authorities. Due to the favourable response from the public, a minor variation was submitted in March 2021 to allow the use of a small outside seating area. Again, it was granted without any objections. Mr. Karp provided photographs. I don't know whether you've seen them for your information. If you have, you'll see that he invested heavily on this very pleasant looking premises, which has improved the curb appeal in the centre of Kinson. It's certainly a vast improvement to the empty shop unit that was there for almost 3 years. Over the past year, Parma Pizza has become extremely popular with mostly family and middle-aged community. There are also many customers who work in the late night economy who are requesting the opportunity to dine in the restaurant after they finish their work, thus the request for the extension of both the seating areas and the hours. This will provide an extra 30 covers on the first floor. Unfortunately, during this time, Mr. Karp has also reported harassment from a small number of neighbours. This included bogus telephone calls in the early hours of the morning during the pandemic. These calls were attempting to have pizzas delivered. On being refused due to the premises being closed, the callers then questioned why he was there on the premises and accusing Mr. Karp of breaching his licence. Members of the committee, as you're aware, during these times, these types of businesses were requested to deep clean their surfaces each night, which took several hours, thus why the staff and Mr. Karp were on the premises. These calls and other neighbour problems received by Mr. Karp were reported to Dorset Police, Environmental Health Officer and the licensing unit by myself, giving them this information. The statement you have before you from the landlord, Mr. Alistair Wilson, also outlines ongoing problems that he's had with neighbours with complaints being made which are unfounded or uncorroborated. The applicant, Mr. Karp, is available today and is willing to give more details on some of these problems if required. Members of the committee, with reference to the objections received as a result of this application, I would make the following observations. With reference to the reports of urinating in the garden and the alleyway, you will see, if you have the photographs, that the alleyway has a locked gate that requires a code to open it. This gate would have prevented anyone other than restaurant staff and a neighbour at 144A from entering the alleyway on the rear garden. The restaurant and outside seating area are constantly monitored by CCTV, with the recording having to be kept for 31 days. This would have allowed Dorset Police to identify any such antisocial behaviour or illegal drinking should it have been reported. It would appear, by the lack of any police or environmental health representations, that these complaints were either not made or were believed to be unfounded. The reports of drug abuse, urinating and vomiting are totally refuted by my client, who reiterates that the majority of his customers are middle-aged or families. Again, any of these incidents would have been identified by the means of the CCTV. The premises also provides modern, clean toilets for all customers. Requests to mediate with those making the objections were made by myself, but these efforts were declined, as is their right. In conclusion, the applicant has worked extremely hard to provide a modern, sit-in Italian restaurant in an area that has been deprived of such facilities for many years. Over the past 2 years, Mr. Carp has built up good relations with both loyal customers and surrounding businesses, resulting in the need to extend both the seating and the hours. Unfortunately for him, a small minority of residents still refuse to accept the restaurant in its current location. If the licence is granted today, Mr. Carp will strive to continue to operate his business to a high standard and continue to hold up the licensing objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. I have, I don't know if Mr. Nikolai Karp wants to add anything to that. If you have anything extra you'd like to add, Mr. Karp, at this stage with regard to your application, please feel free. You have the floor, Mr. Karp.
I don't want to add anything. I am completely agreed with Mr. Ramsey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karp. Thank
you very much.
I just wanted to have a point of clarification, actually, from our licensing officer with regard to the police reports, that these alleged incidences have been reported to the police. Have there been reports to the police? Have there been any reports to licensing or environment, please, with regard to any of these behaviours? Thank you.
Yes, so on the first, in December 2021, we did receive one complaint with regards to alleged noise nuisance and a breach of the licence conditions, stating that they were opening after their licensed hours. This was investigated, however, no one have ever came back to either environmental health or licensing, so it was really an unfounded complaint. So no further information and no further action taken.
Thank you. So there was no evidence of the alleged issues?
No.
Thank you, Mrs. Jardine.
Mr. Ramsey's got his hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Ramsey?
Yes, just to around about the times when Mr. Carp instructed myself to contact the licensing department, which I did, I believe, on the 4th of January, regarding the calls, the bogus calls to the premises.
Yes, I was just trying to ascertain as to, we listened to what you said there and about those behaviours, but I was just trying to ascertain if there had been a report to any of the responsible authorities and what had been the outcome of that, and they were not upheld, which is what I was trying to ascertain. Thank you for that. Do we have any further questions for Mr. Ramsey? Councillor Williams?
No, other than no police involvement, nothing upheld, and nothing seemed to stack up to a problem.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions, Councillor Bagwell?
No, I think it's very, very well run premises, to be honest. I think the issue is neighbours, not okay premises.
Thank you. With regard to that particular point, which we've ascertained that the complaint was yes, the complaint was not upheld. Thank you. Mrs. McNamara?
Mic on.
Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought it may be quite useful for Mr. Ramsey just to clarify the position about the the New Year's Eve and the permitted hours to the 2nd of January. So I understand that the current licence allows it to the 2nd of January because that was on the application and there were no objections to it, so it was automatically granted. In relation to this application, obviously this is a new application. If you could just clarify what the permitted hours is the application for the 2nd of January or for the 1st of January for this application?
Yes, it's been an error on my point.
Yes, it was.
First application, and I'm more than happy for that. It should have read the end of licensing hours on the 1st of January, and I'm more than happy for that to be amended.
Thank you very much. We will take that on board, and we will certainly accept that because it's normal practice from the 31st to the 1st, and it's clearly an error. Of which, of course, it can happen. But as you've offered to the 1st, we will accept that. Are members so content? Right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Thank you, Mrs. McNamara. That was extremely helpful. I was trying to point in that direction, but your clarification is helpful. So if we have no further questions from members for Mr. Ramsey? None? Right, okay. Mrs. Jardim, do you have any questions for Mr. Ramsey?
I don't, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we move to the other persons to make their representations, and I have one which was made anonymously, so I shall read this out, but obviously we have no name, and it reads as such. I object to the business Parma Pizza extending their alcohol licence as they have been breaching these licences for months. We have reported numerous times to the police for antisocial behaviour, serving alcohol till 3 a.m, and all customers being drunk and disorderly in the street, customers being sick on my property next door and using my alleyway as a toilet, serving alcohol to under 18s, barman does not check IDs, the smell of cannabis from his younger customers throughout the week sitting outside. He has breached the licensing already since opening by serving alcohol between 2:30 and 3 a.m. and breaching his planning permission too. If someone could contact me regarding this application, I would much appreciate it. There are lots of unhappy residents. Never had a problem the whole 4 years I lived here until he moved in and made mine and my family's lives hell. This has seriously affected my mental health and abilities. I'm no longer able to work. So that was from an anonymous individual who wrote that. We then move on to the second submission, which was Mrs. Eloise Gotobed. And it reads, I do not agree to Parma Pizza serving alcohol to this time. They cause enough trouble in the local area already. They and their customers do not respect the neighbours and other properties in the area. There are young children often disturbed at the current times already. They use our garden as toilets, stand outside our doors, being loud and rude when told to move on, and they already serve alcohol past their closing time. So similar complaints to the previous. And then I have a letter of support from the ward councillor. Oh, was it go to bed? I do beg your pardon. It was Eloise good enough or yes, good enough? Oh, right. I must have got her name wrong. Eloise Goodenough. My apologies. And thank you very much, Mrs. Goodenough, for that submission. I move on then to the ward councillor who has put in a written submission. This is Councillor Lawrence Fear of the Kinson ward, and it is in support of the applicant. And he says, I'm speaking today in support of the applicant, which is a small, popular local business that has helped put Kinson on the map in an overwhelmingly positive way. Looking at this well-presented application and knowing how conscientious the owner is, so it's no surprise that neither the police nor the environmental bodies are objecting to this application. I know that the applicant is conscious of the local community, and I understand he will be taking further measures such as additional security cameras as a result of the feedback to keep a watchful eye not only on customers leaving his business, but with a view along the high street, which will provide further security and reassurance for customers and residents alike. Furthermore, due to the applicant's stewardship as well as the nature of the venue itself, it is apparent that there is little antisocial behaviour at this premises. As if the police thought that this premises was exacerbating any problems of this nature, then they would have objected, and rightly so. This premises is growing in line with local demand and is a positive addition to our community. They have joined the Business Forum, the Rotary and various other organisations, which shows that they care for the High Street and wish to further support it going forward. They also have supported a variety of charities and community groups in the area, so I'm very happy to support the application. Thank you, Councillor Lawrence Spear. So that was from the ward councillor. So those are the representations. We don't have anybody remotely or to actually speak on them. So thank you, Councillor Bagwell. And of course, we also have, which I shan't read out because we've had those papers, there's in supplementary papers, we had word from the landlord, which I will just addend to. It may be for balance that as long as it's, and that is from Alistair G. Wilson. Statement about the landlord. I will, for the purposes of completeness, read this out. Thanks to Councillor Bagwell, because I've read everybody else's out. And this statement says, I'm the landlord of the premises known as Palmer Pizza, 1448A Wimborne Road, Kinston. During this time, I have always had an excellent relationship with the tenant, Nikolai Karp, who has always acted in a responsible manner. The shop was empty for over 3 years, and the introduction of Palmer Pizza has transformed this area of Kinston, making it an inviting and elegant place to visit. Mr. Karp has built his business into a classy and successful restaurant that has raised the standard of eating places in the Kinston area, attracting families and couples to eat out in the area. Over the last couple of years, myself and Mr. Karp have been courteous to the neighbours and informed them well in advance regards to any building work taking place at the premises. However, none felt it necessary to acknowledge our efforts. Since I have leased the premises to Palmer Pizza, I have had problems from some of the surrounding neighbours who, it seems, have got used to an empty shop unit. These included unfounded objections to the planning applications made by Mr. Karp, complaints of antisocial behaviour late at night outside the premises, and urinating in surrounding gardens and the alleyway at the side of the premises. The clientele of Palmer Pizza are mostly in their 30s and 40s and always conduct themselves in an orderly manner. The complaints regarding urinating in gardens and the alleyway are rather bemusing, as the entrance to the garden alleyway are through a high gate that is secured with a combination keyboard, with a combination only known by the restaurant staff, myself, and other next-door neighbour. It is to be noted that this neighbour, despite several warnings, continually blocks the alleyway with car tyres and rubbish. In conclusion, both myself and Mr. Karp have worked tirelessly to build good relationships with neighbours, both residential and business. We are pleased to say that on the whole this has been successful. However, it is in my opinion that a small minority will not be happy until Palmer Pizza is returned to a vacant shop unit. And that was from the landlord of that unit, Mr. Alistair G. Wilson. So we have two representations with regard to objection and two with regard to support. So none of those individuals are actually here to question. So it may be that we question them through asking Mr. Ramsey if he can advise us on any of that, because we are not able to ask those people who've made those representations. So I will ask then Councillor Williams, do you have any questions which we could put, which we could ask Mr. Ramsey if you might be able to assist us with?
No, I don't.
No, you're content.
I am.
Councillor Bagwell?
I'm content as well. We have it all written down in the overview from Mr. Ramsey was exceedingly good.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey, I think just to ask for some confirmation with regard to the two objections, which I'll just pop back to. The main substantive was with regard to the many reports that had been made, and we have heard that those were investigated and no evidence was found. There's also reports of drug use. Again, we haven't had any thing from the responsible authorities with regard to that. Can you comment on the statement that the premises is opening between 2:30 and 3 a.m, please? Be grateful. Thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My client very conscientious as far as his hours are concerned. It was made clear to him when I did the initial premises licence. He was under no illusions that any breach of his licensing conditions or his hours would result in problems, especially in an area such as Kinston. His clientele as has been mentioned, are middle-aged and families. And the type of premises it is and the cost of any alcohol isn't the sort that would attract the types of people that the neighbours are mentioning. And he refutes any allegations. And as I said, that would all be covered on the CCTV if he was breaching his licence.
Yes, that's helpful. And the other comment from Eloise Goodenough, she says, being loud and rude when told to move on. Could you tell us in what context that might mean, told to move on? Are people gathering outside the premise after they've eaten and drunk? Thank you. If you could comment on that, I'd be grateful.
Yes, there is a seating area to the outside of the premises, which is limited in the hours by the Pavement Cafe licence. Mr. Karp and his staff are aware that under the public nuisance crime licensing objective, he has to make sure that people move on and are asked to move on politely at the end of at the end of the day, and that's what he does. Him and his staff do each night.
Okay, thank you. And last, again, I'm sorry to have to come to you, Mr. Ramsey, but we don't have the other persons to ask questions of. There was a suggestion made in the presentation put forward by Councillor Fear that there was some thought about CCTV. Did you have any comment with regard to that?
Yes, the premises has a CCTV system. But obviously, with the constant complaints from some neighbours, Mr. Karp and I have often discussed, along with Mr. Wilson, the possibility of covering any areas that may not be covered, and that is something that is an ongoing issue with us, is to continue to see how we can better the CCTV, especially outside of the premises. So
you're in review mode, so to speak.
Yes, I think it's important that premises are always reviewing. It's an ongoing thing, and that's what we're doing at the moment.
And it's not something you feel is appropriate at this time to perhaps offer as a condition. You're still wishing to review until such time as you feel that might be necessary. Am I right in that, or if I'm not, please correct me?
Yes, it's something that we're constantly reviewing. It's not something that we want to put forward as a condition, because personally, being an ex-police officer, I feel that the current CCTV system is more than adequate, but it's something that we will constantly review.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. That's extremely helpful. Mr. Karp, it's very difficult to ask a question when there's nobody here to answer it, but if you do have a question, we'll try and give you an answer which might come from any of the objectors or supporters. Did you have anything, Mr. Karp?
No, to be honestly.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, Mrs. Jardim, again, difficult to ask when they're not here, but we would try and extrapolate. Is there anything you wanted to clarify or ask? No? Mrs.
No,
Jardim?
Chair, thank you.
No, it's a difficult one, isn't it? But we still have to try and interrogate it the very, very best way we can, being in the public domain, and that people understand we're doing our very best here. Thank you very much. For that was very helpful, Mr. Ramsey. So moving then forward to, I now give you the opportunity of summing up, and the party who spoke last will go first. So we don't have any of our other persons. I think we've tried to interrogate and ask the questions we should, and I think that their summaries sit within their submissions. So Mr. Ramsey, you have the floor. You're free to summarise. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Conclusion, as I've already said, the applicant has worked extremely hard to build up a very good and very upper class business in the Kinston area. He's built, over the last 2 years, he's built up very good relations with the local businesses and his clientele, which is increasing all the time, which has led to this application being submitted today. And he will continually review his business and strive to meet the 4 licensing objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. Mr. Karp, did you wish to add anything at this juncture? It's your opportunity now to summarise with regard to your application. Thank you.
I don't want to add anything. I just happy to proceed with the new license because we are more popular. That is the reason what I apply for this license, because we have extra customers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karp. Mrs. Jardim, do you have a summary?
No, thank you, Chair. I've said everything I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll now conclude the hearing, and the subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and the clerk to deliberate directly after this meeting. A notification of the subcommittee's decision will be provided within a period of 5 working days, beginning with the day on the last day of which the hearing is held in accordance with regulations, which is the day Thursday, May 26th. Notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate, and I'll ask our legal advisor to explain the right of appeal. Thank you, Mrs. McNamara.
Thank you, Chair. There is a right of appeal against the decision of the subcommittee. The applicant may appeal to the Magistrates' Court within a period of 21 days, beginning with the day that the applicant is notified of the decision in writing.
Right, thank you very much. And we move on then to item 6, which is Cherry's Cafe, 65A Curzon Road, Bournemouth. And the subcommittee is requested to open and adjourn consideration of this application until the subcommittee meeting of 8th of June 2022 in order to comply with the timescales of the hearing regulations. The reason being that the applicant is on holiday and not able to attend, so as we so agreed, this application is adjourned as agreed. Members, do I have an agreement that we can so adjourn? May I have a show of hands, please? Unanimous in that. Right, thank you very much for your contributions today and for advising us of your application. We will now go away with our legal advisor and our clerk to consider your application, and you will have the outcome as provided by law. Thank you very much for attending today. If I could ask, please, Mrs. McNamara, if you'd stay with us, and if I'd ask everybody to leave. Thank you very much.